Tom entered his country home through the front door on a Wednesday morning. It had been several days since his last visit, and his intention was to retrieve a few items and depart again. He anticipated that his wife, Peggy, would be at work. As he entered the kitchen to prepare a cup of coffee, Tom observed the handcuffs and strip of duct tape that he had left behind. The towel, which he had discarded on the floor after wiping his face, remained in place. The video camera, which he had left on the table next to the kitchen, was still there. Instead of preparing coffee, Tom opened the refrigerator and removed several items. A bottle of Diet Coke was located in a place that was not expected. The woman demanded an explanation angrily as she entered the kitchen. The man did not look at her or answer. He proceeded to walk past her into the bedroom to gather some clothes, but she grabbed his arm. She repeated her question angrily. The man stopped and turned to look at her. She was his wife of 7 years. Years ago, the woman he loved, but now the woman who had devastated him. "Let me go," he said softly. Peggy looked at him, there was no expression on his face, and his eyes seemed dull and lifeless. She let go of his hand and let him pass. Peggy picked up the handcuffs, duct tape, and kitchen towel, then walked over to the trash can and she placed the items in the trash unceremoniously. She proceeded to the bedroom, where she found Tom packing a suitcase. "What are you doing?" she inquired. "I'm packing," he replied and continued. "Another business trip?" she inquired, her tone laced with sarcasm. "Then, may I inquire as to your destination?" Tom paused, his expression remaining impassive. "What does it matter? You are my wife. I have a right to know." "Peggy, you relinquished that right last Sunday afternoon," Tom interjected, adding a few more items to the bag, closing it, and carrying it into the living room. He proceeded to the study, where he placed several documents from the desk into his briefcase. He then closed the briefcase and packed the laptop and power cord into the computer bag. Tom subsequently made his way to the kitchen table and picked up the video camera. Upon opening the camera, he discovered that the SD card was still in place. He then inquired, "Is this what you recorded on Sunday?" Tom inquired of Peggy. "Is this a souvenir of your payback? I appreciate your thoughtfulness." Tom remained impassive. "Tom, talk to me," she demanded. Tom regarded her with a countenance ablaze with rage. "What have you done to me? Why are you leaving?" she implored. He sat at the table with her. Tom opened his computer bag. He placed a laptop on the table and sat down in front of it. He then gestured for Peggy to sit next to him. Once she was seated, he inserted the SD card into the slot and initiated the playback. He then prompted her to observe the video. The video showed a chair pushed away from the kitchen table on the right and an empty space. The scene shifts to the kitchen table on the left. Peggy's voice can be heard welcoming Tom back and inviting him into the kitchen. She promises him a surprise, which she had mentioned to him over the phone. Tom's image then appears on the screen, smiling. Peggy walks up to him, dressed in a short, thin robe. Her hair and makeup are immaculate, and she is barefoot. She holds the handcuffs in her hand. She smiled and proceeded to sit down in the chair. Tom sat smiling at her. Peggy then went behind the chair and squatted down to cuff him. Her rope fell open, revealing nothing underneath. She then proceeded to slide one wrist into the cuff, loop the chain through the back of the chair, and finally, secure the other wrist. Peggy then stepped out of the frame and returned a moment later. In a brief interval, he was covered in a strip of duct tape, yet his smile remained visible. She stood before him and lowered her robe to the floor. Tom's eyes widened with delight at the sight before him. She inquired, "Are you ready for your surprise?" He nodded, and she replied, "We already know." She then called out a moment later. Subsequently, footsteps were audible, indicating the approach of another individual. Tom turned his head to observe, and a man attired in a Tom robe entered the room. Tom's expression transformed from one of amusement to one of astonishment. "Honey, you surely recall Jody from my workplace, do you not?" she inquired. "Indeed," Tom replied. "Well, then, let me assist you in removing your robe." She proceeded to approach Joey and untie the belt on the robe, subsequently removing it from his shoulders and discarding it. Joey was naked under the robe. Tom stopped the video and looked at Peggy. "Why?" he asked. "You are aware of the reason," she replied. "I am not certain what you are referring to," he said. "Before we were married, I informed you that I would do it," she said. "Your statements are unclear," he said. "What is the meaning of this?" he asked. "Before we were married, I told you that if..." She began to say, but he interrupted her. "Have you ever been unfaithful to me?" she inquired. "I would engage in sexual intercourse with another individual in your presence as retribution. Do you recall that incident? This is your vengeance. I promised, and I have fulfilled my obligation. You believe I have been unfaithful to you. I know you have been unfaithful to me. I will inquire with Peggy when I have been unfaithful to you. You have not. Attempting to deceive me is futile. You are fully aware of the circumstances, locations, and individuals involved." Tom retrieved the SD card from the laptop and placed it in his bag. He then closed the laptop, placed it in his bag, and departed. "State your intentions clearly, or I will be forced to take my leave. Do not feign innocence while engaging in such activities. I was on a business trip last week when I received a call from Jerry's wife, Jill. She informed me that you and Jerry had spent the week in bed with a couple of women. Jill stated that she had provided you with evidence of your infidelity. You retaliated by engaging in sexual intercourse with someone based on a phone call from someone you trust. I did it based on her word alone, without any actual proof. I did not need any. You handcuffed me and slept with a man right in front of me, humiliating me, all based on what someone told you. That is precisely what I did." Tom shook his head. His head was still puzzled. "You did not discuss the matter with me. You decided that I was guilty and deserved to be punished and then carried out the punishment without any evidence at all. Therefore, we are now even. Even if it is of no consequence now, there are a couple of things I would like to say." "Go ahead." "I am listening. I was attending a conference all last week. Jerry was not present. He was terminated from the band 2 months ago for engaging in an extramarital affair with the receptionist at the office. I had not seen or heard from him since he left. I was a speaker at the conference and delivered my presentation from a table on stage from 7. The time frame in question spanned from 12 a.m. to 10 p.m. Every day of the week, from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., was videotaped. After the sessions, the group met daily until midnight to discuss and plan the next day. I have numerous witnesses regarding my whereabouts. I never left the hotel until I went to the airport after the conference was over. Therefore, your assertion that I left the hotel is false. I have proof of where I was and what I was doing the whole time. You have only a phone call from someone who wasn't even there as proof. This seems to be a rather weak case. However, I believe her. What we believe does not make it a fact. I previously held the belief that I was married to an exemplary individual, a paragon of benevolence and affection. However, the events of Sunday have led me to recognize that I am, in fact, married to a woman who is flawed and malevolent. She has demonstrated a profound lack of regard for me, subjecting me to physical and emotional abuse without any tangible evidence of wrongdoing on my part. They did not respond. I am now departing, and I will communicate with my attorney in the next few days. I am not pursuing a divorce, that was not my intention. We are now in a position of parity. I did not engage in infidelity. I trust that you were listening. I am not an unintelligent individual, and I did indeed listen. You still believe that your actions were justified. If I may be so bold, I believe I have a right to be justified. Therefore, I suggest we cease discussing this matter further. I would be grateful if you could kindly contact Jill and inquire as to the evidence she has. I am curious as to what it may be, although I understand it may not be of great consequence at this time." Tom then proceeded to leave the house, going instead to his hotel room to view the video on the 3 DVDs. He had already made an appointment with his attorney and gone to the place where he had initiated the divorce proceedings. The reason for filing would be adultery. He provided a copy of the DVD to his attorney, and the prenuptial agreement would be valid and supported. The evidence on the DVD indicates that Tom himself handed the documents to Peggy when they were filed. The attorney made suggestions regarding financial matters that should be addressed immediately, and Tom took care of them as soon as he left the attorney's office. His cell phone was put on silent mode, and when he arrived at his hotel room, he checked it. The first call from Peggy came in approximately 5 minutes after he left, and then nothing was heard for about 2 hours. Subsequent calls came about every 5 minutes or so, and he listened to only one voicemail, the first after the 2-hour interval. Tom took a 1-hour break. "Oh my God, Tom. I finally got through to Jill. She was drunk. Please call me. I made a mistake. Please call me." Sean, her father, responded. "This is Tom. I know who you are. You are not the only one who can read. What did you do to my daughter?" "I did not do anything to her except not return her calls." "You are wasting your time." Tom remained calm and simply stated, "Did you engage in sexual intercourse with someone or something? You son of a bitch." "Sean, listen to me. If you want to know what happened, you're going to have to find out from Peggy. I'm not discussing this with you or Mary or anybody else. You really cheated on her, didn't you? Goodbye, Sean." Tom terminated the call. Sean promptly called back, but Tom ignored him. This was soon followed by a call from Mary, his mother. He deleted their voicemails and then went to dinner. He returned to his room for the night. On Thursday morning, he purchased a new cell phone but kept his old one as well. He went to his office and took an extended vacation. He also provided them with his new number but requested that they not share it. When he reached the far end of town, he rented a small furnished apartment and signed a 6-month lease. Tom signed a 1-month lease for a furnished apartment. He went to the grocery store for groceries and household supplies. By the end of the day, he had the house in order. Friday morning, his lawyer called. He met his attorney at the courthouse. He signed the papers and, after filing, was given a copy for Peggy. Her copy did not require a signature. However, the attorney told him to be sure there was an impartial witness when she was served. Tom called Peggy and they arranged to meet for lunch at a restaurant they frequented. When Peggy arrived, Tom was already waiting for her at a quiet table at the back of the room. She was dressed and Peggy appeared to be in good health when she approached. She was greeted by Tom, who stood up to greet her. Peggy embraced him, attempting to kiss him, but he merely raised his cheek. It was evident from her expression that this was not what she had anticipated. She sat down at the table facing him. "Tom," she began, "I made a mistake. I want us to. Let us put this behind us and move forward. I concur that it is time to move forward." Tom declined the waiter's service. It was Len he had known for a considerable period of time. "What can I get you to drink?" she inquired, smiling. "I would like a tube of Diet Coke," he replied. "Please stay a minute," Tom asked. He then reached out and took the divorce papers. He then handed her the divorce papers. "Lynn is my witness that you have been notified." "Thank you. I am attempting to move forward, Tom, but I must admit that I made a mistake. That is not what I intended to convey. Peggy, we have been married for over 7 years. Until Sunday, those years were the most wonderful of my life. I have loved you unconditionally and deeply, and I do not believe that I will ever love anyone else quite as much again. Do not discard the memories we have shared, Tom. We have a strong and loving marriage. It was, and it still is, a wonderful bond. On the previous Sunday, you irreparably damaged our marriage and my affection. I acknowledge that I erred in judgment. I ask you to consider the following: when I look at you or close my eyes, I see the woman I once loved. I also see him having sexual intercourse with her on the table in front of me and telling me how much she enjoys it and how much better he is as a lover. He is more adept than I am at recognizing my shortcomings. That is what I see now, Peggy, not the woman I cared about. You killed her that day, but Tom, it was all a mistake. No, it was very deliberate. The reason you did it was a mistake, not the act itself. I informed you that if you cheated on me, I would have revenge sex in front of you. You were aware of what would happen. I informed you of the potential consequences of your actions, and you concurred with my assessment. I did anticipate this eventuality, yet I did not anticipate your response. You lowered your gaze to the table. You stated that you would divorce me. Did you agree to that? Yes, but I did not engage in infidelity. Tom held out a DVD to her. This is for you. It is a copy of the document entitled Not Cheating, which was created in collaboration with Joey Tom. It should be noted that the act in question did not constitute cheating, rather, it was an act of revenge. Upon returning with their drinks, Lynn informed them that they could place their lunch orders. Peggy, we cannot continue as we have been. You have revealed a side of yourself that has caused irreparable damage to the woman I loved. You have effectively killed her, as surely as if you had cut out her heart. However, you did not. Instead, you ripped out my heart. I do not wish to divorce you. I will fight you on Sunday. You have shown me a different side of yourself. I have another side too, one that you do not possess. I would like to see what other side you possess, the side where you become as vicious, indifferent, and malevolent as you were on Sunday. I will use a mistake as an excuse and take full responsibility for my actions. That is not who you are, and you are aware of it. Interestingly, I was thinking the same about you. Damn it, Tom. It was a mistake. It was, in fact, an act of deliberate revenge. What did you tell your parents? I informed them that we had a falling out and that we would work it out. I then initiated a fight about what Peggy looked like. I did not mention what Peggy said. I informed them that you were having an affair. I did not tell them the truth. Why not? They would not understand the nuances of the situation. Perhaps I am finally grasping this concept, Tom. I am aware that my actions were misguided. I based my decisions on emotion rather than logic. I recognize that I caused you significant distress, but we can overcome this obstacle. We can rebuild our marriage and move forward. Very well, we shall put this marriage behind us. The woman I love no longer exists. I will fight you at every turn. I am attempting to salvage our marriage, but it is beyond repair. It is over. Do not force me to reveal my other side, for it will not be to your liking. You are merely bluffing. Do not test my resolve. Peggy, I advise you to seek legal counsel and request a review. The petition requests that any inquiries be directed to my lawyer. In 90 days, you will be single and free to pursue joy as you see fit. This matter has no bearing on Joe. I apologize for my previous rudeness. I am not leaving you. The settlement is fair, and I ask that you accept it and move on. In a particularly vivid dream, Lynn brought Tom food. Tom handed her his credit card. She walked away and returned a moment later with a check for his signature. Tom signed it, then stood up. He still hadn't touched his food. Enjoy your meal, Peggy, he said. I lost my appetite. Last Sunday, when you spit on me, Tom left and went to his house. On Tuesday, Heckley met with her lawyer for the first time. She was a challenging client to engage with, but Heckley was recommended by a friend and felt compelled to try. Have a seat, Mrs. Given. I'm Ronnie Savage. What can I do for you? My husband is attempting to divorce me. Has he served you with papers? She asked last Friday. May I see the papers? Heckley replied. Ronnie produced the documents and perused the initial page. He inquired as to the veracity of the claim that adultery had occurred. She responded in the negative, stating that it had been a misunderstanding. He then asked whether she had engaged in sexual intercourse with someone other than her husband. She confirmed this, but asserted that it had been an inadvertent mistake. He then sought to ascertain whether her husband had consented to her engaging in sexual intercourse with another individual, not necessarily the person in question. He did, however, consent to her having sexual intercourse with this person in retaliation for his infidelity. Mrs. Gibbon consented to sexual intercourse in retaliation for her husband's infidelity. Thus, she engaged in sexual intercourse with another individual in response to her husband's infidelity. However, this sexual encounter was not motivated by a desire to exact revenge. Rather, it was a result of discovering that her husband was not, in fact, unfaithful. Despite this revelation, Mrs. Gibbon still engaged in sexual intercourse with another individual as a form of retribution. Sexual intercourse. I did have sexual intercourse with another person, Mrs. Given. However, it is called adultery. I thought my husband was cheating. What proof did you have? A friend told me that he did it. However, apparently, your friend was wrong. Yes, finally, someone who sees that it was a mistake. Based on what you told me, I am dealing with a woman who had sexual intercourse with another person in retaliation for her husband's infidelity. Based on her assertion, does he have proof that you had sexual intercourse with another man? I restrained him with handcuffs and forced him to watch. Therefore, it is his word against yours. Is there any tangible evidence? I recorded the entire incident on video. Do you possess a copy of that video? Peggy presented the DVD that Tom had. Given that the incident occurred on Friday, I requested to view the footage. Ronnie inserted the DVD into the player and paused it after viewing only a few minutes. I will review the entire recording later, but I must first familiarize myself with the petition. She began reading the document after a few minutes. Ronnie looked up from the document after perusing a few pages. Upon initial examination, it appeared to be a comprehensive prenuptial agreement. However, upon closer scrutiny, it became evident that the wording pertaining to adultery was particularly robust. If the complainant were to alter the wording of the complaint to reconcilable differences, it would be prudent to avoid that particular clause. Nevertheless, it is likely to be a challenging task. Even with the printup, he is offering you considerably more than the law requires. Without a printup, you will likely be able to get a significantly larger cash payment. I do not desire a cash payout, nor do I desire a divorce. My preference is to have my husband back. You informed him that, yes, he did not even consider it. Contested divorces are costly for all parties involved. Should counseling be pursued, it would undoubtedly prove costly for all parties involved. Nevertheless, it may be beneficial to explore this option. By seeking counseling, we can inform the relevant parties that, should he refuse, we will pursue all available legal avenues. Do you have any evidence of wrongdoing on your husband's part? Anything he has done that could be considered criminal? He is as impeccably virtuous as can be. Has he ever struck you or threatened you? He never even raised his voice to me. I will meticulously review the documentation, view the video, and respond within a day or two. He has a copy of the DV petition, which was filed on Wednesday. Given the strength of his case, it is likely that he will prevail. The video recording is highly incriminating and should be kept from the eyes of the judge. Let us begin with the points previously discussed. We are prepared to offer 6 weeks of family counseling, whatever it takes, as I am eager to reunite with my husband. 2 days later, Tom's lawyer contacted him and requested his presence in the office. In the afternoon, Tom requested 6 weeks of couple counseling. What if I decline? They will undoubtedly attempt to resist our efforts. I am opposed to this idea. What are your thoughts? She hired Ronnie Savage, who is highly regarded and arguably more skilled than you. I consider myself to be the most accomplished. Are you prepared to engage in a fierce battle if necessary? Then let us decline. Tom requested that Peggy keep him apprised of developments. That night, Tom contacted Peggy. Peggy, I have ceased participation in counseling. As previously stated, engaging in debate on this topic will reveal a facet of me that you may find disagreeable. Why are you behaving in this manner? Cease this frivolous pursuit of divorce and return home, Peg. That is not a viable option. This is your final opportunity to avoid a more severe outcome. I will no longer contact you. I am engaged in a dispute with you, Tom. I do not desire a divorce. Tom terminated the call the following Monday. Peggy filed a countersuit, citing irreconcilable differences. She requested comprehensive relief 2 days later. The local school board and the school where Peggy was employed were served with documents alleging a romantic relationship between her and her husband. Teachers Peggy and Joseph Kerr were provided with a package containing graphic images of the two engaged in sexual intercourse. This prompted the convening of an emergency closed-door meeting of the school board, resulting in both teachers being dismissed from their posts on the same day. Subsequently, the jury's wife received a DVD via post, accompanied by the names and telephone numbers of those featured in the video. She proceeded to contact Tom, who confirmed that he was indeed the sender. I believed you were entitled to be informed of the circumstances surrounding the creation of this video, which was filmed a week ago, on Sunday, at my residence. Is this the individual seated in the chair? The video is authentic and unedited. Is this woman your wife? For the time being, I will file for divorce. That is all I needed to know. I am sorry to have bothered you, Tammy H. The following day, Tammy contacted a divorce attorney. Che called Peggy and reprimanded her for exposing him with her act of despite the loss of her job. Peggy remained determined to exact revenge on Tom. When another week passed with no word from him or his lawyer, she was undeterred. Tom's next move involved sharing the DVD with Peggy's parents and sister. After a brief introduction to the video, they began asking questions and pressuring her. Tom's old cell phone rang, and he answered his sister's call. This prompted him to take action. Mandy, Peggy loves you, Tom. However, her actions demonstrate otherwise. It was revenge sex, after all. Consequently, she has yet to divulge the truth. What is the truth, Mandy? I was not having an affair. She received a call from a friend who informed her otherwise. She accepted this information as truth without any proof. This was her revenge. Tom, Peggy is not that stupid. She is capable of discerning the truth. If she allows the divorce to proceed and stops fighting, you will know the truth. If that is the end of it, then it is only the beginning. One must be able to deal with this. Have you watched the CBD? This is merely the beginning. One must observe all of this and then ask oneself if one's husband is willing to try to reconcile. Would you do that? I will, but I still think you should at least try to work it out. Mandy, you have known me since we were children. You know I am not a bad person. Watch the DVD, please. I will, Mandy. I spoke with her on the telephone approximately an hour later. She called back. Oh, Tom. I'm so sorry. I understand now, but I still need to speak with Peggy. I must inform her that if she ceases to oppose the dissolution of our marriage, this will be the end of it. However, if she continues to resist, the situation will only deteriorate further. I will convey this message to her. Mandy visited Peggy in person and, upon confirming that Tom was being truthful, relayed his warning. Peggy was adamant in her refusal. Manny then informed Peggy's parents about Peggy's meeting with Tom and his insistence that she drop the countersuit. That night, Peggy's parents visited her and provided copies of the documents. Sean's family friend, an attorney, reviewed the documents and advised Peggy to follow Tom's instructions and proceed with the divorce proceedings. Despite this advice, Peggy remained reluctant to relent after another week. Tom then proceeded without consulting his attorney. Peggy was teaching Sunday school at the same church her parents attended. All members of the Women's Auxiliary and the ministers of the church received a flyer in the mail. The flyer depicted images of Peggy engaged in sexual acts with a man who was not her husband. The caption read, "Should this woman be teaching your children on Sunday?" Peggy's parents were treated more like leapers than parishioners. Following the service, the pastor excused them to a private conversation to explain why he had also provided them with a letter for Pete, informing them that her services would no longer be required or even welcomed. A copy of the flyer was enclosed with the letter. Upon receipt of the letter, Peggy wept but still refused to drop her counterclaim. Peggy informed her lawyer that what Tom had done, telling and showing her family, was not a crime. This was clearly evident. In the DVD, Peggy informed Tom that she had made the tape for him since it was his property and that he could share it with any adult he wished. The flyers were distributed anonymously, so without a comprehensive investigation, it was not possible to trace them back to Tom. Ronnie advised her to drop her counterclaim, and her family also urged her to do so. The situation was having a negative impact on their lives. Sean contacted Tom to discuss his concerns, and Tom reiterated his position. Peggy's neighbors and friends began receiving similar flyers a few days later. The flyers, which only included Peggy's name and contact information, prompted an influx of unsolicited calls and messages to Peggy's phone and email. Her vehicle and driveway were vandalized with trash, and her social media accounts were inundated with further harassment. This intensified from including any windows to photos with blacked-out elements. Subsequently, Peaky received an email from a pornographer expressing gratitude for the video. When a news crew arrived at her residence, she finally contacted her legal counsel and dismissed the counterclaim. She requested a meeting with Tom, who agreed on the condition that it be conducted in his attorney's office. They convened a few days later. Peaky appeared to be a shadow of her former self, having lost weight, and based on her outward appearance, it was evident that Heckle had been deprived of sleep. At the table across from her, Tom said, "I have withdrawn the countersuit." "I have lost everything that was important to me," Heckle replied. "I lost my marriage, I lost the woman I loved, and I lost you." "I am sorry you had to see it," Tom said. "I don't know what to say. I can't show my face anywhere. I'd have to leave even to get a job. I can't remain here. Everyone we have ever known treats me like a leper. We both lost everything, have we not?" "Indeed, Peg. We did." Tom's eyes were brimming with tears. "I know it is too late now, but is there anything I can do to undo what I have done, besides figuring out how to turn back time?" "I do not believe so, Peggy." Tom rose to his feet and began to leave. Peggy rose to her feet and held out her arms for one last embrace. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Tears were streaming down her cheeks as Tom took a step toward her, then stopped. His own eyes were filled with tears. "I can't, Peg. I feel like I was cheating on the woman I loved." He stood looking at her for a moment, then turned and headed for the door. When his hand touched the door, he turned back again. "There's one thing that might help," he said. "You could say I'm sorry just once." Tom walked out of the office and out of her life.